Hi, and welcome to the channel. Here we share stories that touch the soul. Enjoy listening.
The sun was already coming up over the small town of Madison, scattering golden rays onto the old brick houses and worn-out fences. It was still quiet on the streets, maybe just a few birds hopping from branch to branch, chirping their first morning tunes. 69-year-old Grandpa Samuel Sam Harris was sitting on an old wooden bench under a maple tree near his house, holding a mug of strong black coffee. He was wearing his favorite gray knitted sweater, and his eyes, which had once seen war and loss, were now taking in the peaceful everyday. Neighborhood kids laughing at a little dog that couldn't quite reach its ball. His neighbor, Mrs. Brannan, hanging out fresh laundry. The old bridge that hadn't been fixed in years but was still holding up. Sam did this every day. Sunrise, coffee, a little gardening, and then reading the paper and watching the world. His hands, covered in wrinkles and scars from years past, carefully turned the pages. The newspaper was old, but he liked it that way. The smell of the ink, the thin paper, the small news stories that talked about the real life of a small town, not the political wars in the big cities. His garden was his pride. On the edge of the small patch, he'd planted a row of tomatoes with small flower beds running between them. Every plant was under his control. He knew when to prune, water, and feed the soil. The garden was his little fortress of calm, his ritual after decades of a life that wasn't always peaceful. But even in this quiet, something was bothering him, just on the edge of his mind. Sam noticed an old gray car driving slowly down the street, stopping near the store, and then the driver staring at his house for a long time. "Am I starting to get paranoid?" he thought, taking a swallow of the bitter coffee. But his gut told him it wasn't a coincidence. The past sometimes comes back without warning, and Sam knew that better than anyone. The past was always close by, even when you try to forget it. Sam remembered the days when he was young and quick, when he could wiggle his way out of any trouble and knew all the little tricks to earn some easy money. It was a long time ago, but the memory of his former cons lived inside him like an old wound. Sometimes he even laughed at himself. "I'm a master of the small-time hustle," he'd whisper, recalling how he once tricked a local banker out of a few $100, or how he helped a buddy fake some documents to get a loan. But everything was different now. Grandkids, family, neighbors. Life had become simple and peaceful. He was Sam Harris, the grandpa who could drink coffee on his bench without thinking about the past. And yet, the ringing of his old cell phone broke this perfect scene. The screen showed a number he didn't recognize. Sam picked up. "Sam," the voice on the other end said, small and cold. "It's time we talked." Sam froze, his finger unintentionally squeezing the mug as his heart picked up speed a little bit. The voice belonged to Jack Mitchell, an old partner he'd done unofficial business with years ago. Jack was the one who always found ways to turn risk into profit, but also the one who never forgot old debts. "Sam, long time no see," Sam said, trying to sound calm. "Yeah, but some things don't get old. I've got one last job, a big one, and I want you in." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. Last job. Those words reminded him of his youth, the risks, the times he barely made it out dry from all his escapades. His mind had already started sizing up the situation. What kind of job was it? Why was Jack calling him now? And what could this big score mean for his family? He listened carefully, realizing that the life he'd finally started to value could be on the verge of disaster again. His heart tightened and his mind revived old skills: strategy, caution, cunning. After a short silence, Sam answered, "I'll listen, but nothing rash. I'm not the young guy who rushed into everything anymore." Jack laughed quietly. "You never change, Sam, but this time we could both win, or lose." The call ended. Sam lowered the phone and looked at his garden for a long time. The tomatoes glowed with red fruit, and the flowers gently bowed in the morning sun. Everything seemed peaceful and normal, and yet his heart knew the calm was coming to an end. The past had returned, and this time there'd be no place left to retreat. Sam sat in his old armchair by the window, looking out at the empty street in front of the house. Jack's call wouldn't leave his mind. For decades, he had tried to forget the old business, but Jack's voice brought it all back to the surface. The tricks, the fear, and that rush that used to run through his veins. He opened a cupboard and took out a small notebook where he jotted down small tasks, shopping lists, and reminders. On a clean page, he wrote a few words. "The last job." The words felt heavy, like stone. Sam took a deep breath and started remembering the past. In his youth, he knew how to make money in unconventional ways. Never stealing outright, never taking more than he could handle. It was small stuff, Sam thought, recalling those cons involving small-time bank fraud, selling fake tickets, and helping friends forge documents. His life was risky, but always controlled, until unexpected events happened that left scars on his soul. And now Jack was back with a big project. Sam looked at his grandkids playing in the backyard. He couldn't let this dangerous hustle touch them. But at the same time, that old feeling of excitement, which had never died, flashed in his heart. The next day, he met Jack in an old garage on the edge of town, where they used to run their small operations. The garage smelled of old oil and dust, and tools that hadn't been used in a long time lay on the floor. "Sam," Jack started, "I'm not going to try to convince you. You know the rules. Big job, big payoff. And this time, it's real." Sam clenched his fists, trying to hide his nerves. "Jack, I don't want to risk it anymore. I'm living a quiet life, and it's enough for me." "Quiet," Jack smiled. "That word's not for guys like us. You know what we're doing. This time, just once, and we're set. Millions. And you're the one who can do it, Sam. Your skills haven't faded." Jack spread several documents on the table. Blueprints, money transfer charts, photos. Sam frowned, grasping the scale of the project. This wasn't just a petty con, but a full-blown fraud scheme tied up with banks and big companies. Every step was risky. Every mistake meant potential jail time or worse. "So what do you need from me?" Sam asked. "Control over the process? Your smart head? You know how to act quietly, fast, without leaving a trace. Only you can pull this off." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. Millions of dollars? It was a massive amount, but the price could be deadly. He remembered how one of his former partners ended up in jail due to carelessness, and how he barely avoided the same path. That evening, after the grandkids were asleep, Sam sat at the table in his room, looking over the documents. His hands were shaking a little. He knew, if he agreed, his life would change forever. If he refused, he might lose the chance to finally solve the family's financial issues that sometimes weighed on his heart. His wife, Margaret, quietly walked into the room, noticing his agitation. "Sam, what's wrong?" she asked. It's complicated," he sighed. "Old contacts, they're offering a job. Big risk." Margaret sat next to him, taking his hand. "You don't have to do it. We survived without it. You've always been smart. Hold on to what you have now." Sam nodded, but his heart told him he couldn't ignore this chance, not just for the money, but also for the thrill that had wakened up in him again. The past was always whispering, and this time it wasn't letting go. He spent the next few days thinking. He watched the town, listened to his gut, and recalled his old skills. Everything he did in his youth could now become essential. Every small detail, every trick, every risk, all of it might be needed. And then he made a decision. He would agree to the last job, but only on his terms. Control, caution, and his family's safety. Those were his top priorities. And so, with a tremor in his heart and a cold, clear mind, Sam Harris took the first step into a world he had long tried to leave behind. The past had returned, and this time, it wouldn't forgive mistakes.
Sam Harris sat in his old garage where the smell of stale oil mixed with dust and the damp scent of wood. Piles of papers, a laptop, and several photos clipped from newspapers lay on the table before him, marking buildings, routes, and the times employees left the offices. His hands moved calmly over the table, organizing papers, checking notes, and recording new details. Just yesterday, he was drinking his morning coffee on the porch, admiring the tomatoes in the garden and watching his grandkids run around the yard. But today, he was forced to dive back into a world he had tried to leave behind years ago. The past, like an old shadow, was haunting him again. He pulled out his phone and dialed the number of an old friend, Henry Morgan, who used to help him with small-time cons. Henry answered almost immediately. His voice was cold, but with a slight smile that spoke of curiosity. "Sam, are you serious?" he asked. "Yes," Sam replied. "Serious. This could be the last chance to do something significant and settle things once and for all. But the risk is huge." They agreed to meet at a cafe near the train station. When Henry walked in, his gaze went straight to the documents Sam had prepared. Henry leaned over them, looking at the schematics and notes. "Are you out of your mind?" he asked quietly. "This isn't a petty con. It's a full-scale operation, and every step is a risk of prison or worse." Sam offered a barely visible smile. "I know," he replied, "but it can be done, and I need you for it. Only you can do this cleanly and without a trace." The next day, Sam met with Lewis, a former driver and getaway planner who also had vast experience in small but precise heists. Lewis listened silently, only nodding occasionally. "We do this once," he said when Sam finished explaining. "No room for error. One mistake and we're caught." Sam nodded. He knew that just as well as Lewis did. Every detail, every move had to be calculated. The days went fast. Sam spent his mornings in the garage, his evenings checking routes and drawing up plans. He and Lewis took shifts near the target office, photographing employee movements and noting the times people went in and out. Henry worked on the computer systems. He created fake server routes, analyzed security systems, and prepared digital cover. Sam believed that technology was half the battle. The other half was psychology, knowing how people move, when they are vulnerable, when their attention is diverted. In the evening, he sat on the porch, looking at the garden. The tomatoes were turning red, the flowers swayed quietly in the wind, and his grandkids laughed, playing in the yard. Everything seemed calm and peaceful, but Sam knew the outward calm was deceiving. Scenarios of what could go wrong constantly spun in his mind. Someone in the team betraying them, the police accidentally intercepting information, a technical glitch. He knew that one detail he hadn't foreseen could destroy everything. One evening, while Sam was reviewing the plans, he noticed something strange. A tinted car that drove past his house several times, stopping briefly. His heart sped up. He knew it to be a coincidence, but his intuition warned him someone was watching. The past he tried to bury was returning, not just in the form of Jack or old partners. Now there were unfamiliar glances, unknown threats. Sam cautiously took a shotgun from its hiding spot in the garage, though he knew it probably wouldn't be used. The next day, he called the team to the garage. Sam handed everyone copies of the plan and route blueprints. "Listen closely. We do this once and no mistakes. Henry, you're in charge of the technical side. Lewis, the routes and logistics are on your shoulders. I coordinate all actions and look after my family's safety. Nobody risks what's more precious than money." They listened intently. Sam noticed that even Lewis, who was used to risk, looked slightly shaken. A sense of danger hung in the air, heavy and unpredictable. Every day, after meetings, Sam stayed alone in the garage, sitting among the plans and photos. He felt tired, but also the thrill that once lived in his veins. The past was no longer just a memory. It had become an active reality. The mix of fear and excitement that once gave him a wild rush of adrenaline now accompanied every thought. He looked at the photos of the office, the route diagrams, and imagined how smoothly everything would go, or how one wrong decision could ruin his life. He recalled helping Jack with small cons, and how once he barely avoided arrest because of a partner's mistake. Back then, he swore never to take risks again unless absolutely necessary. But now, with millions and his family's safety on the line, he realized the risk was unavoidable. He couldn't turn back. He couldn't ignore the opportunity to resolve everything once and for all. At night, he stayed by the table, checking plans and routes. His thoughts constantly revolved around, what if someone on the team betrays them? What if the police accidentally intercept digital traces? What if his family is endangered? Every possibility was considered, every weakness accounted for. Old age made him physically slower, but experience gave him an edge. He knew how to anticipate people's actions, how to read their behavior, how to remain unnoticed. One evening, while Sam was checking Henry's computer system, he received an unsigned email. Only a few words. Step back while you can. His heart beat faster. He knew it wasn't random. Someone was watching, and danger was closing in. Yet he didn't retreat. The past could be harsh, dangerous, and unpredictable, but Sam decided he would control the situation. When the team met for the last time before the job started, Sam spoke clearly, coolly, assigning roles. He said, "Remember, this is one shot. Anyone who threatens the team or the family is out. There is no room for error." Lewis nodded, Henry offered a slight smile, and Sam felt ready. But inside, his heart was pounding fast. He knew that planning was only half the job. The real action, the intrigue, the unexpected circumstances, it was all still ahead. When everyone had left, Sam remained alone in the garage, looking at the plans, photos, and blueprints. He felt responsibility, exhaustion, and excitement all at once. The past had already intervened into his present life, and now not just the heist, but his family's safety and his own life depended on how he acted. He took a deep breath, held it, and thought, it all starts now.
Sam Harris stood in the garage, reviewing the final preparations. On the table lay tablets showing money movement charts, vehicle routes, the fake documents Henry had prepared for system access, and surveillance gear. He took a deep breath, feeling a tremor in his hands, though his mind was cold and focused. This was the moment they transitioned from planning to action. "Everything's ready," Henry said, checking the last line of code on the laptop. "The system is in place, digital tracks are masked, we can start." Lewis approached with a bag containing tools and backup routes in case of unexpected situations. "Routes checked 3 times. We have escape routes and a plan if anything goes wrong," he confirmed. Sam nodded. He felt the tension rising. Every step demanded attention. Any mistake could mean arrest or even serious danger. But right now, he felt that familiar old rush of adrenaline that always accompanied his cons. They split into teams. Henry stayed to control the computer systems. Lewis left to check the reserve routes and possible exits. Sam headed to the operations site, the main office of the financial company. As he approached the building, he noticed the first complication. A police car was patrolling the street. Sam took a deep breath and recalled the lessons of the past. Move subtly, use cover, don't draw attention. He cautiously entered a doorway, using the building's shadow as a mask. "Sam, everything's going to plan," Henry quietly transmitted over the radio. "But there's movement. Someone unknown is observing the entrance." Sam held his breath.
Maybe it was paranoia, but experience told him to be careful. He moved into the shadow, watching the unfamiliar car, and noticed the man in black, who was clearly trying to remain unnoticed. "We can't allow extra witnesses," he muttered to himself. "Everything has to be clean." The action began. Henry activated computer access to the company's internal system, bypassing security protocols. Sam entered the office using fake documents. Everything was going according to plan until Lewis transmitted a message. The emergency exit was blocked by construction work. "Fine," Sam said. "We adapt. There is a second path." But then the unexpected happened. An alarm signal appeared on Henry's tablet. Someone had activated the internal surveillance system earlier than they anticipated. Henry nervously tapped his fingers on the keyboard, trying to suppress the signal, and Sam felt his heart pounding. "That's not our code," Henry said. "Someone broke into the system parallel to us." Sam understood they were in serious danger. He quickly reviewed the plan. They could either retreat or continue the operation, accounting for the new risks. His heart screamed caution, but his brain commanded him to act quickly and precisely. "We continue," he decided. "Lewis, activate the reserve vehicle exit. Henry, narrow the scope of our actions to avoid traces. We're doing this." They worked like a single organism. Henry controlled the digital part, Sam physically coordinated the process, and Lewis managed the logistics. Every step was calculated, every move precise, but the tension was increasing. Every sound, every movement could mean a threat. Suddenly, Sam noticed that one of the colleagues in the office was becoming suspiciously curious, asking strange questions about system access. Sam's heart squeezed. Someone might be a traitor. He decided to act cautiously, not showing panic, but carefully watching every move. "Henry, we need a quick access block. If he's trying to intrude, we must leave only the data needed for the operation." Henry nodded and quickly typed combinations of codes. The alarm signals on the tablet began to fade, but the tension remained. Sam felt that every second mattered. He thought about his family, about Margaret and the grandkids waiting for him at home, and that gave him strength. The heist was approaching its final stage, moving funds, rerouting transactions, and covertly fixing data for evidence should they need to act in court or avoid criminal prosecution. Sam closely monitored every step with scenarios of what could go wrong in his head. Suddenly, a siren sounded outside. Sam felt a chill run down his spine. A police car drove closer to the building. Lewis signaled that the reserve exit was now blocked. Sam instantly made a decision, act decisively and simultaneously. He ordered the team to complete all actions in minimal time and leave only what was needed for success. They worked as fast as possible, every move calculated, every decision instantaneous. Sam coordinated the physical actions, Henry the digital ones, Lewis the routes and logistics. After minutes of intense work, the siren quieted, the digital routes were hidden, and they managed to leave the building unnoticed. Sam walked out onto the street, feeling exhausted and exhilarated at the same time. The heist was done, but the danger hadn't disappeared. They didn't know who was watching, who might discover their tracks, or who was the potential traitor. Each of them felt the cold breath of risk on their shoulders. "We did it," Lewis said, quietly, trying to smile. "But it's not over yet." Sam nodded. He felt the fatigue, the tension, and that old thrill. The past had caught up with him, but he had gone through it and survived. He knew that consequences and reckoning were still ahead, but the first major move had been made. Evening fell over the town, and Sam stood on the sidewalk, looking at the streetlights reflecting on the wet pavement. Everything seemed peaceful, but he knew this was only the beginning. The heist in action opened a new chapter of his life, full of intrigue, danger, and moral choices. The past which had seemed dormant was haunting him again, and now not just the success of the operation, but the lives of his family and loved ones depended on his resolve.
Sam sat in the car near the old warehouse on the outskirts of the city, clutching a cup of coffee that had already gone cold. Night enveloped everything around them, and the street lights cast narrow yellow circles of light where they looked almost like shadows. and that was good. After the first operation, they had a little time before processing and distributing the haul. Henry warned that the digital cover wouldn't last long. They had to move fast before the tracks went cold. Lewis reviewed the routes, and everyone agreed it was best to secure the result, not just by taking the money, but by adding an extra layer that would make rapid tracing impossible if anyone started digging into their tracks. The idea came up about a week ago when Sam noticed several cardboard boxes in the Target office containing old agreements and archival forms, contracts that should have been on the shelves for years. Someone from the management was conducting an audit, and these papers could be the key. They contained signed old transactions and internal notes that would confuse any auditor. If they were made available for disappearance or substitution, it would create multi-layered confusion, tracks that would take hours, even days, to correct. Sam proposed a second strike, not for money, but to erase or move the very documents that could tie them to the operation. Henry didn't think it was a foolish idea. Technically, it was complex, but beneficial. Lewis skeptically twisted the keys in the car lock, but a cold determination flashed in his eyes. "We're going in one more time," he said dryly. "Not for profit, for cover." Sam felt a surge rise in his chest, like the final line of defense that needed to be laid before they all scattered with the loot. The plan was simple in concept and tough in execution. Henry was to create a short-term digital flash opening in the internal system, which would allow Lewis to access the archives department and find the necessary boxes of papers within 10 minutes. Sam was to be the gray cover, a person who appears in the office without raising too many questions and creates a story for the security personnel. For this, he needed a forged Audit Commission member ID. Henry managed the logistics, pushing the genuine IDs into the database just for the duration of the operation. After that, Lewis was to take the documents out and hide them in several places, not just one, thereby scattering potential traces. They started at night. Sam slipped into the main entrance like an innocent visitor, his fake badge gleaming with laminate. He confidently walked down the corridor, greeting the guard with a smile that masked his internal tremor. Henry was sitting in the van 2 streets away, waiting for the access code. He whispered instructions into the earpiece, adjusting the timing. Lewis, hiding behind a technical door, slowly advanced toward the archive. Everything seemed to be going smoothly until Sam saw him, a man in a gray coat standing by the window, looking directly at him. He wasn't a guard. Sam barely breathed. He had a feeling that the moment could change everything. He quickened his pace and headed for the elevator as if simply rushing to an important meeting. Over the radio, Henry heard the change in Sam's voice. "There's someone, a man at the window." "Hold steady, don't expose yourself," Henry replied calmly. "We're raising the reserve cover." Meanwhile, Lewis broke into the archive and ran into another problem. The old cargo door was jamming. He had to grab a crowbar and work harder than planned. The minutes ticked away, and images of the past flared up in Sam's head again, when one mistake cost him much more. He felt the cold creeping up his neck. The man in the gray coat was no coincidence. When Sam exited the elevator to walk down a different corridor, the man was already standing with his back to him, as if contemplating some painting. Sam leaned in, approached him closer, and as if casually whispered, "Late auditor?" The man didn't turn around. He only nodded silently, but his eyes swept over Sam with an assessment that confirmed Sam's suspicion. This was not just some employee. His intuition whispered, a watcher, not friendly. In the archive, Lewis found the first boxes, but not the right ones. Then others, also not right. One of the boxes was poorly packed, and when he opened it, he noticed old invoices and payment orders inside that strongly resembled documents from the first scheme. They weren't needed by them, but could serve as evidence pointing investigators in the wrong direction. Lewis realized someone had already looked through the archive before them. Someone was looking for the same thing they were. Lewis's heart squeezed. He quickly started searching other shelves. Henry was transmitting codes and correcting his tracks when he noticed an anomaly in the remote log. Someone else in the system was making queries, but not like bots or automated scripts, but manually, with intervals that suggested a human. "Someone else is working in our temporary windows," he announced into the earpiece, "and it's not us." Sam felt a chill run down his spine. Someone was targeting not only their operation, but possibly the exact spot in the archive. Lewis finally found the boxes they needed to move. He pulled them out and quickly started looking for places for temporary concealment. Under the seat in an old van, behind the panel of one of the storage rooms, in a cavity between two shelving units. He couldn't carry everything out at once. It was too risky. His hands moved quickly but carefully. It seemed to him that every sound in the hall doubled the danger. Bushes tapped against the thick windows from the wind. Suddenly, footsteps in the corridor changed rhythm. Heavy, purposeful. Someone was walking toward the archive. Lewis had literally only a few minutes left. He tucked the boxes under his shirt and crawled into the shadow, watching a guard look under the shelving. His heart was pounding, and his thoughts flew to Sam, asking about reserve signals. Over the radio, silence. Henry was probably distracted at the control center. Sam was walking down the corridor, catching the eye of the man in the gray coat. They had a brief, silent pact with a glance. Both understood the situation was hot. Sam stepped away, and after a momentary pause, gave Lewis a sign. Fast. As Lewis fled through the emergency door, he met a guard right at the exit. The guard stopped him, smelled paint on his shirt, and asked where he was going. Lewis answered slowly. "Technical malfunction. Sorry, just checking." The guard gave him a look, but Lewis, thanks to years of experience, managed to give a believable story. The guard, though suspicious, ushered him past. At that moment, everything was decided in split seconds. They got out on the street, breathing heavily, as the van waited for them in a shaded driveway. Sam got behind the wheel. Henry closed his laptop and quickly transferred data to temporary storage layers, and Lewis slipped into the van with his quiet package. As they drove away, Lewis nodded and whispered, "Someone was in the premises before us, someone who knew what to look for." When they stopped in a safe location, opened the boxes, and started reviewing the contents, Sam felt a cold grip his throat. Some of the documents were exactly what needed to be hidden, but among them were others, notes, stamps, that indicated a completely different origin of the materials than they expected. Someone had been digging into this matter for a long time. Someone had left truly intelligent traces, as if not wanting some simple person to come and just take everything out. "This isn't random," Henry whispered. "Someone is setting a trap for us." Sam held the box of documents, looking at them like fragile cards that could be used to their advantage or that could just as easily ruin them. They had already made 2 strikes. The first, financial. The second, archival. But now it was absolutely clear. Someone third was in the game, and that meant the consequences would not be long in coming. Sam felt a sense of responsibility sharpen in his mind. They closed the boxes, distributed the documents into several hiding places, and decided to change their location for a few days. Before parting ways, Sam looked at his people and said in a quiet but firm voice, "Someone else is joining this game. We must expect to be outplayed. Prepare yourselves. We won't back down, but we must protect what's more important than money." Lewis nodded. Henry was silent, and something else flashed in Sam's eyes. Not fear, but determination. The past wasn't retreating just like that. It was issuing a challenge. And Sam, although older than before, could no longer allow that past to destroy the people he loved. As they drove off in different directions across the city, each one immersed himself in preparations for the next stage. When the consequences appeared, they had to be ready. Sam returned home in the morning, exhausted, tired, but with the feeling that another line had been crossed. He watched Margaret meet him, hug him, and for a moment, everything seemed peaceful. But when he looked into her eyes, he knew no justification, no money, was worth devoting their lives to danger, if he couldn't keep the situation under control. And the time of reckoning was coming very soon, and the consequences, he felt, would be harsher than they could have imagined.
Sam sat in his garage. On the table before him lay the boxes of documents and the tablet with figures that just yesterday seemed controlled. Now everything had mixed into a chaotic tangle of consequences. The first heist was successful, the second one too, but the repercussions he hadn't accounted for were already starting to appear. Henry sat next to him, looking at the laptop screen with a tense expression. Louis stood by the wall, contemplating defensive routes and potential escape paths that still remained should the situation worsen. "Sam," Henry began, "we have problems. Someone tracked the transactions of the first heist. Not everything we did went unnoticed." Sam felt a chill down his spine. He knew it would happen sooner or later, but now it was clear that things were much more serious than anticipated. Someone was analyzing the digital tracks, and these weren't random observers anymore. It could be a genuine, professional group that decided to check the old and new documents for forgeries and discrepancies. "Who exactly?" he asked. "I can't say for sure, but the level of preparation suggests someone who worked in the financial sector or law enforcement. We can't rule out private detectives." Sam clenched his fists. He felt the risk not only to himself, but also to Margaret and the grandkids. The past he tried to bury had become active again, and now his family could become a target. He took a deep breath and realized he had to act, not only to protect the money, but to protect the people he loved. The following days were filled with tension. Sam personally checked exit routes, watched the neighbors, and looked at suspicious cars. Louis was tasked with identifying potential traitors among their colleagues and checking if any old acquaintances could have leaked information. In the evening, an old acquaintance, Jack, called Sam. His voice was cautious, but there was a tremor in it. "Sam, I heard you're active again. People are asking about you. Someone is seeing your actions." Sam knew Jack wasn't lying. He felt that their old scam network was starting to give off traces, and that even former allies might be under pressure trying to avoid trouble. "Good, but we play carefully. No one should fall into a trap." He knew that tough decisions had to be made right now. The first choice was moral. Keep the documents and secure the money, but leave his family at risk, or sacrifice part of the gain for the safety of his loved ones. Sam had no doubt. Family came first. He ordered Henry to create additional layers of digital protection and Louis to organize the physical scattering of the documents into several hideouts across the city where outsiders definitely wouldn't find them. But the consequences weren't limited to just safety. At the financial company's office where they conducted the second heist, inspections began. The accounting department discovered inaccuracies in the old documents, and the surveillance system recorded unforeseen entries. Sam understood. If the auditors raised questions, law enforcement might catch up to him. He began meticulously planning an alibi, factoring in every step, every second. One day, a strange package arrived at Sam's garage without an address. Inside was an envelope with photographs. They showed Margaret, the grandkids, and himself getting out of the van with the boxes. The unknown person was watching them. Sam felt the pressure. It was a direct signal. Someone was playing a game where not only money was at stake, but the lives of his loved ones. "We have to work even more carefully," he said, looking at Henry and Louis. "Someone knows what we're doing. Someone is watching." Henry checked the digital tracks and reported, "They are experienced. All our routes have been partially exposed, but not completely. If we act correctly, we can leave traces in a false direction." Sam decided to take the risk. They created a false trail for the auditors, redirecting attention to another division of the company. At night, Louis scattered the documents in several unpredictable places so that even a random search wouldn't lead to them. It was a multi-level game where every move required precision. But the surprises didn't end there. A few days later, Louis reported that one of their old acquaintances, whom they once trusted,
had sided with a competitor or law enforcement. Sam felt the betrayal deeply. A person he considered an ally could give them away for any price. This jeopardized not only the money, but also their freedom and lives. "We must act fast," Sam said, "not just for ourselves, for the family, for those who trusted us." He personally met with the old ally and warned him that any attempt at betrayal would lead to consequences no one expected. The man hesitated, realizing that Sam wasn't playing games. He agreed to remain silent, but Sam knew it was temporary. In the world of cons, you can't fully trust anyone. Alongside the moral and legal problems, psychological consequences began to appear. Sam felt constant pressure, insomnia, and anxiety. He dreamed of threats, stalkers, and lost routes. His routine changed. He spent more time on surveillance, less with his family. This tore him apart inside, but he knew if he didn't control the situation now, the loss would be much greater. One evening, Sam sat in the living room, watching Margaret and the grandkids playing on the floor. He knew that his actions could lead them into danger, but at the same time, he understood these were his decisions, his duty to protect them in the future. He felt that the two heists, which once seemed easy and controlled, had created a network of consequences where even one wrong step could ruin everything. Henry and Lewis helped him bring the situation under control. Digital tracks were hidden, false routes created, and potential threats minimized. But Sam knew they hadn't won. They had only postponed the reckoning. Someone was still watching. Someone could use the information against them, and at any moment, the past could return with a force they hadn't anticipated. In the garage, Sam looked at the tablet and the documentation. He felt fatigue, anxiety, and solid determination all at once. The past haunted him not just as a memory, but as an active force capable of destroying everything he had built. And now, he had to act not for money, but for the life and safety of those he loved. He took a deep breath, felt the cold clench his chest, and thought, all that's left is to be smart, fast, and unpredictable. Otherwise, the consequences will destroy us forever.
The final act. Sam sat in the car in an empty parking lot outside the city, feeling his heart pound from adrenaline and exhaustion at the same time. Night covered the city with a thick dark blanket, and the street lights cast long shadows onto the wet asphalt. The events of the past few weeks span in his head. 2 heists, digital tracks, threats to his family, betrayals among allies. All of it felt like too heavy a burden for one person. But Sam knew the final game had already begun. Henry sat next to him, checking the tablet, which showed anomalous attempts to access their systems. Louis stood by the trunk, checking the packages of documents they had moved from the archive. Everyone was tense. Every movement and sound made them wary. "Sam," Henry began, "someone is trying to break our encryption right now. These aren't just detectives. They are professionals. If they break through, they will find us." Sam took a deep breath. His thoughts instantly ran through all the options. He knew he had to act lightning fast right now. If they waited, there would be no chance of controlling the situation. "Louis, prepare the routes for a quick exit. Henry, block all traces and create false leads. We're doing this now," he ordered. Their plan was to simultaneously create a digital trap for those pursuing them and physically relocate the last key documents to a safe place. Sam knew this was the final chance not only to save the money, but to guarantee his family's safety. They split up. Sam headed through the shadowed streets to the hideout, Louis controlled the packages, and Henry worked remotely, creating confusing digital trails. At that moment, a siren sounded over the city. Someone may have noticed the activity, or an automated control system was triggered. Sam quickened his pace. His heart was racing. At the hideout, he saw an old acquaintance who was previously considered an ally. The man stood with his face obscured by a hood and spoke in a calm voice. "Sam, I know everything. Do you want all this to be your end?" Sam instantly understood. This was the moment of choice. Kill to protect the operation, or risk it and persuade the ally to back off. Everything flashed through his mind. His family, his team's life, his moral principles. "You have two paths," Sam said firmly, "and both are dangerous for you. But we don't want any more blood. We're just going our way. You either help us secure these documents, or you leave and don't interfere." The ally looked confused, but eventually decided to retreat, making no attempt at violence. This bought Sam and the team a few minutes of critical time. Louis moved the documents into several hidden caches outside the city. Henry closed all digital tracks and left false data in the system, pointing investigators in the wrong direction. Sam controlled the entire process, constantly adjusting timing and routes. Suddenly, police cars appeared. The alarm had been triggered by one of the guards, who noticed an anomaly. Sam and Louis quickly used their reserve routes. Through abandoned buildings, narrow alleys, and wooded park areas. Henry remotely redirected the electronic trails, creating the illusion that they had left the city in another direction. The climax came when they reached the main highway. Sam got behind the wheel, Louis sat beside him, and Henry checked the last digital signals on his phone. After minutes of tense silence, they realized the pursuers had lost the trail. Their hearts pounded, their hands trembled, but they were alive and in control of the situation. "We made it through," Sam whispered, "but the price is high." Returning home, Sam saw Margaret and the grandkids. He understood that money and cons weren't worth losing them. The evening silence filled the house, and in that moment he realized that the true victory was not the loot, but the safety of his loved ones and moral balance. The team gathered for the final meeting: Henry, Louis, and Sam. They discussed what to do next. Sam made the decision to seize all heists. They kept the old document caches and digital tracks, but they no longer planned to risk their lives for money. "We went through all this, and we came out whole. This is our final lesson. Control the situation, protect your loved ones, and never take pointless risks." Everyone nodded silently. There was a sense of conclusion, though they knew the world outside wouldn't change and temptation might return. But they had a choice: to live on, protect those they loved, and leave the past behind. Sam looked out at the night city, the street lights reflecting on the wet pavement. He felt tiredness and at the same time a strange lightness. The story of the heist was over, and he remained a man who knew how to make difficult choices. the past that had haunted him for so many years finally seemed manageable, but the lessons remained forever. Evening transitioned into night. Peace reigned in Sam's house. The grandkids were sleeping, and Margaret was sitting quietly nearby. Sam understood that the real finale was not the money, the cans, or the intrigue, but the opportunity to return to a normal life, to protect those he loved and remain himself. He took a deep breath, feeling that the story had ended, and it was not just the end of a heist, but the end of a chapter in his life that would forever leave a mark on his soul.
Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to subscribe to the channel and stay with us for more.